Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, perfect. Good. Let's get started. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Apologies for the issues with webinar. Clearly, technology has still managed to beat us, and we couldn't get the webinar started in a way that allowed everybody to join. But without further ado, let's get going. Hopefully, we'll probably go till about 3:45 UK time. But if you need to drop off, by all means, please do. We will reschedule this webinar for a future date, and hopefully without any technical difficulties. So the webinar, we're going to talk about leveraging AI to understand and action every customer request. Tom, if you go to the next slide, please. My name is Anish Gupta. I am from Centelli. We are a provider of digital worker as a service, and that solution is powered by UiPath. And in that service, we're looking to pick up tasks that are being done by people today, but in a perfect world, would not be done by people. I'm joined by Tom from UiPath. He's a solution engineer and a product expert on communication mining. And the two of us will be taking you through how AI can help understand, make sense of communication. Tom, if we go to the next slide, please. We're going to cover 3 topics. We're going to talk about the challenge with communication that we have today. Then we'll go through communication mining and how it works to solve that challenge. And at the end, talk about a few specific use cases where the solution's already been deployed. If we go to the next one. It'll come as a no-brainer that every single message counts. We have information flowing throughout organizations, both internally and externally. And being able to make sense of that information is what differentiates businesses from one business from another business. Because if we're able to analyze communication, we're able to react to communication and the information, we can take actions much quicker and much better that are designed to get certain outcomes. This is how we do business. We send information via applications, we send information via emails, we send information via calls. There's just a lot of communication that takes place in today's date. But the challenge is that despite all this communication, we still spend a lot of time trying to make sense of what's going on. So according to a study by McKinsey, 28% of employee time is spent in managing emails and associated tasks. They estimated that there's a productivity gain potential of between 20 to 25%. So that means that there's a 7 to almost 10% that can be gained by just if we can improve the way employees are managing emails. 30% of employees say that it's a big distraction from real work. The constant pinging of emails can cause anxiety issues, and this is a well-documented study that emails and the frequency at which emails come in is one of the biggest causes of work-related anxiety and directly impacts productivity. 78% of companies say that they aren't satisfied with the way that they are managing customer interactions and how they're using that data to gain insights. Now, within this, the context of this is there are over 300 billion emails that were sent, according to a study by Redacted Group in 2020. That's growing at the rate of 4%. Sounds small, but that's an additional 14 billion emails that get exchanged globally. The cost of sending an email, nothing. Before we think about it, we send off emails, we do reply to alls, and trying to get sense of that is where the challenge lies. Tom, if you go to the next slide, please. Thank you. How are we doing it though? So this isn't new. It's not something that we've been ignoring, but at the same time, we're still trying to make sense of this. So traditional methods that have been there have been surveys and sampling. So by surveys, what we're doing is we're trying to predefine a set of questions that we answer to try to get insight. But that's predefined. So what happens about information that we don't know about that the question survey does not ask? Well, that's lost. Sampling, we're trying to pick up a few sample emails, maybe a few hundred, and using that to extrapolate what the thousands of emails or thousands of channels of communication are trying to tell us. Very typical within call centers where you can't listen to every single call. You do sampling, you pick some random calls and hope that they give you an insight as to what the overall view is. The second method we use is keyword and hard-coded rules. So again, using knowledge of what was done in the past, we are defining keywords that are helping us figure out what might be happening within the future. Well, what happens if there was a word in there that we didn't know about, and given how emails get written, I might not use the same words as another person. I might be using a completely different vernacular, in which case this all falls short. Hard-coded rules are also based on keywords. So keyword survey sampling, they're both mostly based upon prior knowledge and using that prior knowledge to figure out what's happening within the larger data set. And the next one. And then what we did was we said, well, okay, let's get away from all of this and try to structure our communication. And instead of making it completely free-flowing, we started putting up web forms and tickets. So we would have users, we would direct them to a website, which would ask questions, and that question is what we then try to simplify communication with. The challenge with that is, first of all, it's still prone to human error. Secondly, we're asking for an additional step within the communication channel. And all of this delays our route to insight, our route to actually solving a problem. Okay. But where we stand today, and we've seen some really exciting, we've had some really exciting success with our customers, is we are able to leverage AI to understand every single interaction, every single communication, and look at the data set in its entirety rather than doing traditional approaches. And once you get that, then you're able to automate every request, you're able to action every transaction, and we can do much more with the communication that's going on. So Tom, if I hand over to you to talk about communication mining and how it solves this problem, please.
Perfect. Thanks, Anish. Yeah, hi everyone. As introduced earlier, my name is Tom. I'm from the UiPath Communications Mining team. The slide you're seeing at the moment kind of summarizes how communications mining works. So Anish has given a really good background on the communications mining or the communications challenge, the fact that there's so many communications, the fact that data is unstructured, and actually getting to the kind of the heart of it and the value and the ability to automate is challenging. Now, communications mining has three main kind of parts to it. One, we connect up to your existing communications channel, whether that's an email shared mailbox or a ticket channel within a workflow tool. We connect up, no pre-labeling needed, no kind of annotated data needed. Connect up, ingest the data, and then within the platform, you train a really powerful machine learning model with a day or two's worth of effort to get to a point where it's then understanding all of the requests, all of the sentiment, all of the kind of the entities. So you have all of this payload of structured data you can use to drive action. And that could be action in terms of insight, but that could also be action in terms of automation, using the robots, using the digital workers on the UiPath business automation platform. An example of this, as you can kind of see now, on the left, we've got an unstructured message. In this case, it's a customer requesting a delivery change. And on the right, you can see the structured data that we turn this into, the key entities, the key structured data points that we can train the model to extract, and the intent labels describing what's going on. And you can see here there's multiple levels of intent and multiple different categorizations. It's not just single level, single bucketed categorization. It's trying to capture everything. And you can even see here as that kind of top line is we can understand quality of service as well. This is a chaser. Someone's telling us about a problem in our process. We can really get granular detail about everything that's going on in these messages to really understand how we can improve and better service our customers. The key steps are, as I just mentioned, connecting up, so with our kind of out-of-the-box integrations and using the robots to get the data into the channel for your pre-existing communication channels. Training up the model. So a key thing here is it's machine learning, it's AI. We're training up these powerful custom machine learning models in the platform using active learning and kind of guided feedback on how to improve the performance of the model and recommended actions to deliver the training in the right place. For example, to avoid things like bias. And then once you've trained up the model, as I've mentioned, you discover all of these insights. You can discover things that are taking a long time to be resolved, high volume requests, requests that have a lot of people involved in the thread. Things that really you didn't know before, get really kind of granular visibility into those channels. And then drive automation, of course. when you find something that's transactional, you can confidently extract the relevant structured data, pass that to a digital worker to complete the process end to end. And when I say end to end, this is all about unattended automation. We can also have humans in the loop to validate predictions and actually have humans kind of validate the actions before they happen, before the robot completes them. So you're seeing kind of a nice little video of the problem statement here. Communications are everywhere. Lots of lots of workers struggle to keep up with the work. Messages come into these shared inboxes. Communications mining then reads those messages based on the model that we've trained, extracts that relevant structured data, as I've mentioned, and then the ability to then automate that work, understand kind of what's going on, and trigger these email automations. And to give you an example of some use cases, I'll come back to this in a second. The typical use cases with communications mining kind of fall into two buckets, right? One, analytics, understanding what's going on in the channel, as I've mentioned before. But to give you some examples of this, we have customers who will look for particular process improvements, for example, understanding bottlenecks. We have customers, for example, in insurance that find that their brokers email them when they've got problems, right? Brokers emailing their underwriters when they've got problems, and in particular, certain brokers emailing them about problems with documents. Now, finding that out using communications mining, they could then go in and find that fix and improve those documents so the brokers no longer had those errors, so the brokers no longer have to email them. Similarly, with voice of the customer, we have customers in contact centers that will monitor the communication channels for unhappy customers and customers expressing kind of examples of where they might churn. So, for example, mentioning competitors, mentioning they're unhappy, mentioning wanting to cancel their contract. That then leads to them being identified as kind of churn risks and automatically escalated to client retention teams to reach out. And then fundamentally, monitoring is an important part of this analytics piece, is seeing how things change, seeing trends, being able to really understand and drive the ROI of your improvements and your transformations. And these lead nicely into automation use cases. For example, auto triage and kind of auto prioritization. We have customers that will use communications mining to understand the intent of the message coming in, and then use digital workers to then move that message into the correct queue, saving time, getting work to the right place and handled faster. Case automation is another really good example of extracting information from emails to then send that to a downstream system. Then end-to-end query automation, straight through processing, does what it says on the tin, using communications mining to recognize the email, and then using a digital worker to complete that action end-to-end. Things like policy amendments, address changes, administrative tasks. What does all this mean? This means for organizations, for COEs, for businesses, you can scale AI faster and easier because it's a no-code interface, because it's easy to use, because it's designed with business users in mind. It's quick and easy to create these models and then scale them across your different communications functions. Obviously, transform your customer experience. The more you know about your customers, the better you can service them, the more you can improve your processes around what your customers need and want. We have some customers that even find out product improvements. For example, we have e-commerce customers that will find out when customers are saying that they're not happy with the products and services, and that information gets fed directly into those product ownership teams. And then, as I mentioned, through that monitoring capability, the ability to grow the ROI of other transformation. For example, if you use communications mining to find that there's a fault in the process, you fix it, and then you use communications mining to track and measure and see a reduction in people complaining about that particular fault. And then finally, my final piece here is we have an example here of a shared services operations function in insurance using communications mining and digital workers to handle communications. So, for example, before they were these skilled underwriters were manually handling and reviewing emails and then forwarding them to the correct subject matter expert to handle. That could be a policy amendment, a claim, whatever it might be. But ultimately, these underwriters were not spending enough time on quotes and renewals where they should be, driving business. With communications mining and digital workers, comms mining monitors everything coming in and then routes the correct emails to the correct digital workers to handle. The digital workers then put those into the queues of the SMEs, which gets work to the right place faster, reduces that process lead time, and actually saves a lot of hours of effort that can then be put back into winning new business and making the firm more competitive. So fundamentally, it's not just about saving time, it's about what you can use that time for. If you're thinking about where this could be found in your own business, we find comms mining is applicable across the board, across all departments, really. Wherever there's comms channels being used, we can apply communications mining to really deliver that insight piece. But particularly if you're looking at kind of support, operations, kind of these sorts of high volume transactional departments, there'll be a lot of good opportunities for automation, such as auto routing and query management. Really areas where you know that kind of the people spend the majority of their time, as Anish mentioned at the start, communicating through emails, tickets, chats, whatever it may be. So yeah, that's it from me. I think I'll hand back to Anish to talk about this slide, but I think there's going to be a quick Q&A next.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, we had a few questions that came out before we even started the webinar, so let's take them on. The first question I think is the big one, which is ChatGPT. Why chat? Why not just use ChatGPT? And why communications mining? How is communications mining different to something like ChatGPT?
Yeah, I think the fundamental kind of thing to think about here is that, yes, this is also kind of an AI and machine learning that's based on large language models. But fundamentally, something like a ChatGPT or these OpenAI models are building blocks, right, to build these solutions. Whereas communications mining and kind of just the UiPath platform is a ready-made enterprise solution with all this kind of enterprise controls and security baked in. To give you an example of that, so if you wanted to use an automation using like a ChatGPT, it would effectively be attended, right? It would always be attended. You always have to have a human in there to validate what's come out. And you can build some very powerful use cases, kind of generating responses for a human to then check, but you wouldn't want to put any sensitive data into that. And also you wouldn't necessarily be able to control those predictions and make sure it was the same every time. With something like a comms mining and the kind of the way that that's been architected to get the most out of that large language model, we present to you kind of this determinism, right? The ability to know that you're going to get the same structured data as an output every time. It's really for those kind of high volume unattended automations. You can also fine tune those predictions with particular active learning and training, and have humans in the loop to validate it, at the right points. You don't always need humans based on certain confidence thresholds, but where you want them, you can involve them. And of course, as I just mentioned, those confidence thresholds to really be able to know how confident the model is going to be about the prediction and get that really granular detail. And then obviously, yeah, general kind of enterprise wraparound with having it hosted in a secure environment, having permissioning for only certain people to be able to access the training data. There's a lot of kind of components that are important for an enterprise deployment of AI, and UiPath has all of those ready to go. Whereas, other tools out there, you need to build all of those, and it's not necessarily possible in certain cases. So, yeah, does that answer the question? Okay.
It does, and I kind of echo that in our experience of having used comms mining at customers. It is very secure to deploy, and we are quite confident that the data that the customer has doesn't actually go outside or get used into any other model beyond what the customer is intending to use it for. The other question that we get you asked quite often is, so we're training an AI model, which means we're going to need tens of thousands of emails, somebody sitting weeks and months sitting and labeling and trying to train this AI model before it'll start delivering anything. That just sounds like hard work. How does communications mining address that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is a thing we hear time and time again. And actually, some of our most engaged customers are customers that have tried this before, building something in-house with data scientists, with lots of labeling, and realize the pain involved in that, the time and the effort, right, and the cost. Communications mining is all designed around kind of, well, I'm going to say data efficiency, but actually getting the right training data in the right way. So rather than labeling thousands of examples, communications mining will basically guide you through that training process, telling you where it needs more examples. And so typically customers will give 25 to 50 examples per concept that they want to train out. You obviously can give more, and the more training data you give the model, the better it performs, of course. But really, it's quite data efficient, and it's a guided active learning kind of training process to give the right training in the right way, which means that you can train up these models in this interface with a day or two's worth of effort, right? Rather than it taking weeks and months, it's a day or two. I think that's the kind of the top line metric to think about.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And just to echo again, our experience was that within a few days we were up and running with a fairly rudimentary model, and as we were telling it more, the solution itself was saying, here are where the gaps are. Can you tell me more? can you give me more examples in this particular category? And then once you provided the categories, it was then self-learning and recategorizing every time we were putting the data in. So it was very quick to learn and get up to speed with the information that was needed.
To bring this to life slightly, just to to really emphasize the point here, I'm just showing a model now of a hotel reviews. So these are hotel reviews that we've uploaded into Communications Mining and trained out labels to understand what people are asking about, right? A lot of people are obviously complaining about the price, but people are complaining more importantly about payment issues, which tells us about a problem in the process. Now, to Manisha's point, we can go into kind of this validation piece and see these very specific examples of where we can improve the performance of this model. With very specific training on what we need to do, which we can click on to improve the performance. So it's designed to be super easy to use and super dynamic. And I'm sure we'll be doing deeper dives into the actual platform in the near future. But hopefully that helps to illustrate the point further for the audience.
Cool. And Tom, I think another point that's quite relevant, which is once you've deployed the model and you're starting to get results, how do you see customers using the output of comms mining to drive further, to improve their business processes?
Yeah, so the output's typically either consumed within the reports and with the analytics. So understanding, the volumes, looking at the tree map that I kind of just showed, understanding where there's bottlenecks, understanding trends, really, using that reporting to gain actionable insight. But kind of the big ticket items are obviously in automation, right? Once we're able to understand a concept, extract the relevant information, passing that to a robot through kind of there's a capability built into Communications Mining to expose that data to the robots, to the digital workers to be able to complete an action, and then building that workflow for the robots, for the digital workers within UiPath Studio, right? So once you can recognize something, you can then drive action, and it's really unlimited action based on what you want that digital worker to complete. So we have examples. I kind of mentioned it a little bit in the presentation where in insurance, a customer emails and says, "Hey, I'd like to change my address on my policy." That's a really simple thing for a human to do, to go into a system, input the new data. Maybe they have to verify the person's account first using the policy number and using the name. Well, that's something we could have a digital worker do. If we can use comms mining to make a confident prediction that it's about an address change, that there's a new address, and then we've got the policy number, that can then feed into workflow for the digital worker to look them up in the system, verify their identity, and then change the address in the system, and then send out a confirmation email to confirm that it's been done. Right, straight through processing, all that time spent eliminated from the human, so the human can spend more time on the more valuable, complex tasks. So yeah.
Oh, very good. I think we're about 10 minutes over the originally scheduled time, and I'm just conscious that we might be delaying people from getting into other meetings. So let's wrap it up here. Thank you everyone for attending. We will send out details of this recording, and we will reschedule this webinar again for a future date. Plus, we will be doing more webinars with focusing on particular industries where the solution has already been deployed. So stay tuned for a webinar that's particular to you. We also are offering a free proof of concept for the first 5 customers that do get in touch with us. You can reply to my email that I sent over, or just go to our website, centelli.com, and fill in the contact form. Please do mention that you're coming off the webinar, and the first 5 will get a free proof of concept for their data set and see what they would like to get out of it. Okay, and I'll wrap up here. Apologies once again for the slight technical problems initially, but hopefully we'll have a much more successful webinar. You found this useful, and you can hopefully look at communication challenges within your organization and see how we can leverage AI to better solve them. Thank you, and have a nice day. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, everyone.